Dino Sports Central will be going over our next schedule preview this 2020 offseason, and it will be over the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And this was a team that went 5-7 in 2019. Overall, it was a bit of a disappointment of a season. But yeah, no doubt that they've got a ton of potential in 2020, and that's what we're going over here today. We're going to be going over a few players that this team will be returning, who they're going to be losing, and also going over their schedule for the first time this offseason, starting off with the games that Nebraska has had since November. Of course, we go back to November 2nd when they lost to Purdue on the road in West Lafayette, 27-31. Then they had a bye week, and they had Wisconsin on the home the next week, and they lost that game as well, 21-37. But of course, they get pretty close considering Wisconsin certainly at the time was on fire, no doubt about it. The next week, they had a really good win, probably their best win of the season against Maryland. They won against them on the road as well, 54-7, impressive win there. But they went on to lose to Iowa the next week on a last-second field goal, 24-27, tough loss there. But certainly, looking at the last half of Nebraska's schedule, they ended up going 1-3 through November, and well, the postseason that was non-existent for Nebraska. But yeah, no doubt that Nebraska still has a ton of potential going into 2020. And I don't know about you, but I'm a huge believer in Scott Frost. I think he's a great coach. I think he's going to lead Nebraska to some pretty great times. I think he'll lead them to a couple of Big Ten championships, no doubt about it, in the future. It just is a matter of when, in my opinion. But nonetheless, let's go over the returning production for Nebraska as well. They returned their starting quarterback, Adrian Martinez, and he was a big player in 2018. In 2019, he did a bit of a tough season. Of course, I've heard he was injured for a good chunk of it, so that could have been a good reason why. But he's certainly a really good dual-threat quarterback, as he has over 600 yards of rushing on the 2019 season, as well as 7 rushing touchdowns. As for his passing wasn't all that great. He had 1,900 yards, as well as 10 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, which that is not a very good touchdown-interception ratio. And he was a bit inaccurate as well. Just once again, a tough season for Adrian Martinez. But no doubt, I think if he's healthy next season, I think he could be a very surprising player, no doubt about it. And I think he could be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten as well. I mean, if you look back to him in 2018, I mean, he was there was talk about him being a Heisman contender in 2019. I remember that. But nonetheless, they returned their top running back in Dietrich Mills as well. He had over 800 yards of rushing as well as 10 touchdowns. And they also returned their top receiver, J.D. Spielman, although he's had a bit of drama this offseason. But yeah, if they return him, that'd be huge. 950 yards of receiving as well as 5 touchdowns is what he had this last season. They returned their second running back and wide receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson. He was a big player for this team, and he's also a freshman too. He'll be a sophomore next season, and he had 340 rush yards, 453 receiving yards. So that is 793 total yards that he had last season, as well as 5 touchdowns. So certainly, if he stays with Nebraska for 4 years, he's going to be a huge player, no doubt for them. They do lose their third wide receiver, Kenawai Noah. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but he had over 200 yards receiving as well as 2 touchdowns. So he had a decent season. They'll probably be one of their tougher losses that they have, but they return their entire offensive line. That is going to be huge. But they lose their entire defensive line, so that's going to be the tough part. And of course, the defensive line last season, I mean, it was okay. It wasn't great. But yeah, I mean, the defensive line is definitely going to be probably one of the weaker spots for Nebraska next season, in my opinion. And so certainly that's going to be something that Nebraska is going to need to do well on if they're going to have a bowl winning season. But yeah, they got major room for improvement in 2020, no doubt about it. I mean, I was going into 2019 thinking Nebraska could get 8, possibly even 9 wins. I mean, this was probably the biggest disappointment for me going into 2019, or for the 2019 season. I thought they were going to do really well, and it turned out to be a little bit of a flop. But of course, there were many reasons for that. Once again, Adrian Martinez being injured certainly could have been a big part of that. But once again, as I said before, I'm a huge believer in Scott Frost. I think he's going to lead this team to some really great times, no doubt about it. And I think Nebraska, that potential that they had going into 2019 could very well carry on into 2020. So who knows? Nebraska could be that one dark horse in the Big Ten West, and they could go on and surprise everyone, kind of like how Minnesota did in 2019 and go on to the Big Ten Championship. It is kind of early to say whether they will do that or not, but yeah, no doubt Nebraska certainly will be a surprise contender in the Big Ten West. Looking at their schedule for the first time this offseason, we got Purdue on September 5th. That is how Nebraska opens their season, and that is a home game, so certainly they'll be interesting. I mean, I don't remember Nebraska ever starting with a conference game in a while. Then you got Central Michigan the next week, September 12th. Should be a winnable game there. Then you got South Dakota State on the 19th, followed by Cincinnati. So Cincinnati will be a tougher game. Certainly probably their toughest non-conference game for that matter. And then you also got Northwestern on the road. That is going to be your second conference game. And then you got Illinois, Rutgers, and Ohio State to finish off October. So certainly that stretch from October 31st all the way down through November is going to be tough. I mean, I could certainly see Nebraska going 7-0. I mean, all 7 of those games to start off your schedule are very winnable. I mean, Purdue, that should be a win. Central Michigan, I mean, they're decent. They made a bowl game, but I mean, I think that's once again very winnable with it being at home. South Dakota State, winnable. Cincinnati, Northwestern, Illinois, Rutgers. Really, it would not surprise me to see Nebraska go 6-1 or 7-0 to kick off the season, but really, the big tests are going to come in the later parts of the season for Nebraska. You had Ohio State on the road in Columbus, and they got Penn State at home, which is going to be a really tough game. And then you have to travel on the road to Kinnick Stadium in Iowa, and then you have to go to Madison after that to face Wisconsin. So, of course, those 4 weeks especially are going to be tough weeks, no doubt on that. And they got Minnesota to finish off the season on November 27th. But nonetheless, here's what I'm expecting. I'm going to give Nebraska 4 guaranteed wins, and this is what I expect. I'm not going to give them as high of expectations as I did in 2019 for the offseason, but I think they'll still do really great. I think I'm going to give them a 6-6 to 8-4 record prediction. I think that they're going to go to a bowl game next year, no doubt about it. This will be their first bowl game in, I believe, 2 or 3 years, one of those two. But yeah, no doubt that Nebraska, I think, has a ton of potential going into 2020. They've got a ton of talent, and if Adrian Martinez, once again, if he's healthy, I think Nebraska could get, I think they could be on the higher end of that record estimation. I could see them getting 8, possibly even 9 wins. But yeah, once again, Nebraska certainly is a team that could be a dark horse in the Big Ten West. But nonetheless, let me know your thoughts on Nebraska in the comments below. Let me know your record predictions, your game predictions as well, down in the comments. Let me know also what else you think Nebraska. I mean, this team has got a lot of potential. Once again, I've said this over and over again throughout the offseason. I mean, they certainly have got the talent. They just haven't been able to use it quite yet. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central, and I'll see you all later.